I'm just saying a topic that comes to my mind, and something that I've been enjoying with. I think that's the right word. Is Stoicism, right? And of course, that's not psychology, but back in the day, it was philosophy, and I think that's the roots of psychology. And I think the principles of Stoicism, if we, I think have been helping me a lot in the lockdown, and actually, the lockdown being an opportunity to implement and see if you're able to follow some of the principles of Stoicism, and that's what's helped me a lot. Like yourself, Bhumika, I had a calendar for about 9 months, and this is what in Feb I had about a 9-month calendar, and I was smiling to myself and thinking of the things I was going to buy and stuff, and then it just got wiped out. So this one night I had a sleepless night, almost half the night, and the next day I was able to bounce back. And I think what's contributed to that is one of the pieces that's contributed to that is this whole business on Stoicism. Yeah.
Greg, I would like to know the details. What principles are you following, and how is it helping you? Yeah.
Okay. So Marcus Aurelius is one of the Stoics that I was reading up a little bit on. I have read Seneca, but Aurelius is some guy I'm reading up on. And one of the practices rather than the principle is negative visualization and negative thinking, right? So we hear a lot of positive psychology and a lot of, the power of positive thinking, Norman Vincent Peale, all of that. What this guy says in his book called The Meditations, which is a brilliant book, is that he says, you go about, and as you begin your day, at the beginning of the day, you close your eyes in a meditative exercise, you visualize all the bad stuff happening to you, right? So if you're going to the pool, then you're visualizing, okay, what could, so I'm going to the pool and water splashes on my lovely suit or dress or whatever, and people over there, or I fall into the pool, and then I move on from there, and then I'm going to work, and then something bad happens to me over there. And then he says, when you're visualizing that, so there are 2 parts to it, 3 parts to it. Part 1 is visualizing the bad stuff that's happening to you. The second thing is, once you visualize, stay with the whole piece, let it happen, you don't get out of it. And then when that's happened to you, in your mind then and there, figure out how are you going to, flip it and say, okay, so water's fallen on my shirt, I've gone past the pool, or ketchup's fallen on my shirt, I'm going for this important meeting, or whatever else it is. So what do I see myself doing now, right? And I'll talk about third part in a little while's time. But what happens, so I've tried this on myself. So first I tried the really big stuff, like family members, bad stuff happening to family members. I just couldn't do that. It was a little overwhelming for me. So I started with the small things, not necessarily to build up. And it's, my day, my clients, my work, and it's what it's done for me. It's made me much calmer. It sounds very counterintuitive. How can you, a pessimist and all, but it's made me much calmer. I think that's the third part, which is the outcome. And at first I just tried and did the big things, but you start with the small pieces and do the negative visualization piece. This is one of the techniques. There's a whole thought process of these guys, which has a parallel with Buddhism, which says, don't get attached too much to materialistic things. Look for if you want to get attached to something, get attached to the virtue within you, to very badly summarize it, versus getting attached to a lot of the materialistic things. So that's where it stems from. I think that's where it stems from. And so this is one of the practices that I have been following. And yeah, that's what's worked out.
It's another way of going into Shunya, which is one of the main outcomes or principles of Buddhism also. Very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I am blown away, Greg, because I am usually told that I'm a very optimistic person. So for me, my risk assessment is not that great. I'm gonna put it out there. It takes me a little while to think about everything that can go wrong. So I think that exercise is good in that manner to kind of get your brain going and think and assess risk in things you do, especially when you're growing up and you can't be as impulsive anymore, sadly. And then also the fact that I understand where that is coming from, because then you kind of have a plan, you know things that can go wrong, and you know what, I have a plan for that. If it goes wrong, I know what to do, or I'm not as lost as I would be. So I get that. And then I know, ma'am, you were touching on Shunya, and I remember when we studied Indian psychology, and I was actually just last night reading Vedantas again. I have this very beautiful book, and I started reading it again. Just something came to me, and I said, there was this water story that I want to read again. And I think one of the best things that I did in college was read Indian psychology. 100%. I think opened up so many avenues, so many aspects, so many concepts that I study now. I feel like everything has come from Indian psychology. Uh, and nothing like that. Like, I've never read anything like the concept of Shunya, Atman, Brahman, and Charvak theory, which was even talking about materialism. I would always tell people, read that to open your mind up. Always.
So like Greg, Greg mentioned, yeah.
Sorry. Vandana, can you just say a little bit more on Shunya, maybe after Gurli, before whatever? I just didn't want to miss that thought. That I've heard of it, but...
Okay. So I'm an Vedanti, like Sakshi just told you. So I read a lot of, I would not call it Indian psychology, but I read a lot of Indian philosophy. Like I've read about Vedanta, yoga. For Vedanta, I've taken a formal education for good 8-9 years. And then yoga, and then Charvak and Shunya. So Shunya is a concept given in Buddhism. So it is like a state of the ultimate freedom, renunciation, or enlightenment. When layer by layer, you decode your own self in terms of your physical body, then your mind, then your subtle elements, and what is left is nothing. And they call that nothing as Shunya. So if we translate Shunya into English language, it is zero. So what you call zero in English, though it is not an exact translation in Sanskrit, we call it Shunya in Sanskrit. That's not an exact translation, but that's the one which comes the closest to it. So Shunya is when you have, layered by layer, decoded yourself, layer by layer, you know yourself very well, you know your physical elements, you know your subtle elements, you know your elements of mind, and then what is left is your own existence. And that existence has no form, it has no name, it has no, qualities or adjectives associated with it, and Buddhism calls it Shunya. In the same manner, Vedanta calls it Atman, like Sakshi just mentioned the word. In yoga, they call it Samadhi. So the forms are same, but their names are different in different sects or the paths that you follow. So in Buddhism, it is Shunya. And it's a beautiful explanation given by Buddha and many other, translations following Buddha also.
Vandana, would you have a little bit of a link that you can share? A little bit.
You can have a whole literature from me on all these topics. I'll surely send you a couple of links on our books and on our group.
The thought behind that is not as noble as it would appear. I'm just saying, maybe, and you guys are the past masters of this, Gurleen and all of you all actually. I was just saying, we can take little snippets of this and quickly post it on LinkedIn. And I have copied something down. So you've got Stoicism, you've got Shunya. If you have a little link adding to that,
I'll send a link.
Sakshi,
I never thought this conversation will move towards this side.
That was Greg, you were saying something actually there.
आपने चारवाक के लिए बोला ना कुछ So if you
Yes,
could just
yes,
send something on that, I
I
could
will.
quickly bundle, or if you want to do it, I'm happy, but I could quickly bundle that up and
Yeah.
send it out and stuff for that.
I will send you, and I will actually share the name of the book that I'm reading. It's very thin. It's just a couple of stories that have been brought together from
Yeah.
Vedantas, but it really helped me. And
Yeah.
I was in actually Ladakh one time, and it was like social service trip. We were giving polio drops to children, and we were trying to break a Guinness World Record. It was a beautiful, beautiful trip. We were on motorbikes. I never learned how to ride a motorbike, but I did it there. It was fabulous. And something happened. I went to Shanti Stupa, and I don't know what happened. I started talking to the monks there, and they let me stay. And you never get to stay in Shanti Stupa. You have to go out at 7 p.m. I got to stay in Shanti Stupa with the monks. So for 10 days, I used to get up, and they used to make me those condensed milk tea that they make in the mountainous ranges. And they made something from butter,
Called butter tea.
and yeah, just like to keep you warm. And every morning at 5, they used to make it for me, and I used to sit with them and just talk about Buddhism, talk about travels. They'd obviously met His Holiness as well, and they gave me a lot of books that are written in Ladakhi, and they wrote my name on it. And this monk, he wrote his number as well, and he said, after some years, when you understand everything, give me a call. I will remember you. So I'm waiting for in my life when I understand some of that. So I always try to like read that book, translate some of the words, find it, and it has really given me a completely different appreciation of who you can meet, and like you pointed out, like where conversations can flow, you never know.
Yeah.
And that was the reason to keep this very open, just let the conversations flow for once and maybe find some relaxation there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thanks, Sakshi. Gurleen, thank you for your patience. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. Yeah, so like most of you, I also the existential school of thought, and Stoicism is also one of the school of thoughts I personally practice as well. So I've read this book called on the shortness of life by Seneca. So really great lessons, and that book has taught me to be more disciplined in life, to look at positive things and how I can, kind of balance my emotions and reach the state of equanimity where I'm not like overly excited, be it happiness or sadness. So I'm trying to, reach to that balance, and I try to practice it every day in whatever capacity I can. That's one. And Sakshi, about the theme, which I want to recommend is, I see a lot of change in organizations, how organizations are operating now. Earlier, people used to think that work from home is never going to work, especially for companies like FMCG or consumer electronics or manufacturing. But it's still kind of working out. So, and I was also looking at, different personalities. So earlier, the thing was, introverted people were put into a very extroverted setting in the organizations, and they kind of have learned to balance both introversion working style and extroversion working style. And right now it is very challenging for extroverted people to work in an introverted setting, right?
Yes.
So the tables have turned all together,
Love
and
it.
now yeah, so introverted people are getting recognized now because of their work. They are really fast on the chat, by the way, and they're really active on webinars. So it has flipped altogether. So how personality is also kind of related to your work styles is something I would want to talk about.
Yep. I think quickly there, so just what Gurleen is talking about, we wanted to keep this session very chill, very open, but then what I wanted to do was ask all of you to kind of bring some topics to the table that you think are relevant and relevant to a wider like field of psychologists. So like it can touch upon career psychologists as well, OB practitioners, and all different kind of fields. So what do we think is this one topic that we might want to take forward, discuss with a wider audience? So in the next session, we'll probably like keep the link open. Anybody can join.